Oh my gosh, there I was muted. How about that? Let's start that again. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Saxton Show. It is episode 18. We have been rocking and rolling now for almost 3 to 4 months here on the Saxton Show. Guys, I'm so excited to bring you not only another guest, but a guest that I have actually been looking into, and you're going to notice this right away. He's a guy that's very straight to the point. You're going to notice this, but guess what? That's what we're talking about on this YouTube channel. So if you're watching me for the first time, my name is DeAndre Saxton. At the age of 25 years old, I built a 7-figure coaching and consulting business while being mentored by Bob Proctor. And what I was doing was teaching entrepreneurs how to get to the 6 and 7-figure level by reprogramming their mind. And I started this podcast about 3 months ago where we could attract young men and teach them how to become high value men. So in a minute, we're actually going to be defining that. But most importantly, is it superficial? So if you stay to the end of today's podcast, not only are you going to hear from today's guest, Jesse, so we're going to go ahead and add him to the stream. There he is right there. So we're going to be hearing from Jesse, not only from his words, but by his actions. You're going to be able to take away some great nuggets as a young man. If you're under the age of 35 years old right now, and you're on your way of earning 6 to 7 figures, and you're dealing with women and relationships and money and health, and you're learning how to navigate as a man in today's world, then this is the spot for you. So while you're at it, if you haven't, subscribe to the show, hit that like and notification bell. If you're watching on Facebook, come over to YouTube because that is where we're going to be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I know we're at a different time, guys, so if you're watching the recording, sending you guys big love. So my man, Jesse, let me tell you about Jesse really quickly. So you guys will hear from my friend Chris. Chris Diaz is a guy I've known for a few years now, and he's a guy that I really admire when it comes to character integrity. You know, Chris is a guy that's very disciplined when it comes to food and everything. And so when I was reaching out to Chris, I was on the phone telling Chris exact words I was saying, and Chris said, wait, I'm nothing compared to this guy, Jesse. And pretty much we were on a call for an hour. And I every 10 minutes, he was stopping me talking about Jesse. I'm like, who is this guy, Jesse? I need to meet this guy, Jesse. So we got on a call about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And let me tell you, you're going to notice this right away. He comes from a military background. So you're going to notice that not only does his words and his eyes and his presence pierce your mind and your heart, you're going to be able to take away some great things. And Jesse is a guy that's doing it the right way. He's doing it the biblical way. He's doing it the way that men are supposed to run things. But we get so distorted. So without further ado, I want to introduce my man, Jesse. Thank you for being on the podcast, episode 18. How are you feeling today?
DeAndre, thanks so much, brother, for having me on this show. I'm very excited. I'm feeling pumped up, bro. After that warm-up, that 3 minutes of warm-up, I was over here fist pumping. So I'm ready to do it.
I love it, my man. So let's go ahead and tell us, like in a brief summary, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it that you do? That way we can get before we get into like the nitty gritty here.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I'm a Marine Corps combat veteran and former firefighter. I gave that life up about 4 years ago now, sold all my stuff and took a one-way flight to Costa Rica with no real plans of ever coming home. And I've been working as a transformational coach, specifically helping men become pillars of safety and security in their family and community. And also I'm hosting transformational travel retreats where we combine adventure travel and sacred medicine in the heart of Colombia. So that's a bit about me. I've got my hand on a lot of different things, but I'm all about bringing out the best in people. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you, man.
Let's do it. So let's act as if, by the way, everybody that's watching live right now, or whether you're watching the recording, we're going to have a conversation, just myself and Jesse, and you're going to be literally a fly on the wall as you're sitting on the couch listening to us, right? Because I think those are the best kind of conversations to have when there's no filters and everything like that. So Jesse, we spoke a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this idea of a superficial as a high value man, and you were asking me a lot of questions, and at the time I was realizing you were asking me these questions to see that if I had a similar values and beliefs to you, and lo and behold, we did have similar values, and you saw some similarities in what we were talking about. And I got to thinking towards the end of that conversation that when I was first studying this idea of a high value man, when you look at it on social media or on Instagram, sometimes it seems superficial. And so that's the title of today's video, guys, is being a high value man superficial? So let's go ahead and let's define what is a high value man. So a high value man, defined by Kevin Samuels, who's kind of like almost leading this whole charge here, is a man that is more important or influential in the marketplace. So let's define it. He's not a more important man. He's more important in the marketplace when it comes to other people, his business and how he serves other people. And so, actually, let's leave it with that. In your words, Jesse, how would you define a high value man after leading off with that definition of a high value man?
And well, I'll piggyback what he said. I think the idea of bringing value to the world, to your community, stepping up in ways and providing impact, income, and influence. It's all about creating something worthwhile for the people in your community. And I think he gets into more specifics about what that looks like. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a high value man, you've got to be of value.
And I think that's the word right there. You have to be you have to be of value. So actually, that's a good. What is defined as value now? Like what is it? Where is it that a man is really adding value to the marketplace? Let's maybe start off when it comes to the world of maybe business or the word or career or business. Where can a man be valuable in that area?
Yeah, well, Chris actually said it the best. I think there's a lot of service providers. I provide a service. I host retreats, and I also do coaching in one-on-one and group settings. But ultimately, what a service provider does is he solves problems. And the bigger the problem that you solve, the bigger the value that there is. So ultimately, what we have to do is decide what kind of problems we want to solve. And a lot of times we're looking back on our past, or if not on our past and things we've went through that we want to solve, out to the future and where we want to get our feet wet and where we want to take our life. And ultimately solve big problems. You become of value to a bigger proportion of people. Therefore, your income is coming in bigger streams.
I love that. So one of the things that we don't have to attract a man that we have to tell him on his purpose already. He's mostly on his purpose. If he's, in a career or has a skill set where he's earning already 6 figures, he's kind of already like, all right, guys, I already understand that. But where sometimes these men have difficulty is when we transfer that to either health or, most importantly, romantic relationships. Sometimes I've seen men, I think I talked about in the last podcast, that sometimes there's men that are worth millions of dollars, but yet can't keep a woman, or attracting women that are sucking them dry financially, emotionally. And these guys don't understand how to transfer that high value from business over to the romantic side. And it's just a quick note, guys. Jesse is a man that is married. He's I don't know how long. How long have you been married, Jesse?
We've been married about 18 months.
Okay, 18 months. So he's married, and that's an accomplishment right there. So he's winning when it comes to this whole romantic, because he has a ring, right? He is married. So what does a high value man, how does he move in a quick sentence in his romantic life?
How does he move in his romantic life?
How would we define that?
How do we define that? Well, I think as deep as we can go within ourselves is as deep as we can go in relationships. So ultimately, the people we're getting into relationships with are going to be a reflection of our internal state. So if we're superficial, if all we care about is money, then the women we're going to attract are going to be the exact same way, because we're going to be driving the nice cars, and they're going to love that about you, and they're going to know you have money. So ultimately that's how I see it, at least, is the women you're attracting is just a reflection of how you are inside of yourself, how you treat yourself, how well evolved your emotional world is, and really what your character is, the quality of your character. And that's going to be the type of woman you attract.
Yes, I love that, because we're going to actually dive into this. So make sure you stay to the later half of this episode. We're actually going to go into what are some qualities that a high value man should seek in a woman to also have a match. So make sure you guys stay to the end so we can get into that. So let's define hard traits of a high value man as stated by Kevin Samuel. So I believe there's 2 types of traits: hard traits and soft traits. Hard traits are those being on the outer world. So we talked about this a few episodes ago, but let's talk about number 1, money. So a high value man on a hard trait is money, but he's earning a minimum of $10,000 per month. Number 2, he has proven performance over a length of time. So he's been earning this income for 3 to 5 years. So he's not a guy that just earned money for 3 months, or it's just a crypto millionaire. He's been doing this consistently. The most important thing is here, longevity. He's been doing this performance over a period of time. Number 3, he has group acceptance of other high value men. This is key right here. This is where I was not winning when I came to this scale, because I was earning more money than my friends, and I was associating with them and doing things that I was doing before I started to see success. That started to distract me. So you also have to have a group of acceptance of other high value men. Number 4, you have to have a network. Not only is your friend group, right, your mastermind group, you have to have a network. Politicians, business people, people in religion, whatever it is, you have a network of other men that are also high value, but also in other categories. It can be anywhere. Number 5, visibility. What good is a high value man if he's invisible, right? He has to be visible. You're producing content. You're on Instagram. You're building some personal brand. You're on YouTube. You have a podcast. You're visible to the eye so people can find you. We're not talking about hidden millionaires. As you might define here, understand, guys, the word high value man in this context is a social word. It's not an intellectual word. It's a social word. You're valuable to the marketplace, which means that you are visible. And the 6th and final one here is utility. You want to be used as a high value man. You want to be useful to the group and to others. What good is having all these skill sets or whatever it is that you're working on just to keep it and harbor it within? You have to be a guy that's useful to the world. So those are the 6 outer traits. But Jesse, we can go to Miami right now and find a guy that has all of that. Some Instagram guy, and no hate on these guys, right? Some Instagram guy that's, earning $25,000 a month. He's living in a nice building. He maybe drives a Bentley that he's leasing. He maybe, because of his social media presence or going out, he has a lot of connections. So he's on social media, so he's visible. But yet we get to sit with this guy, and it's just like we're repelled by this, and we're just, whoa, what is going on? There's something that's hidden, that's not seen, that we have to define on this podcast here. And those are the soft traits. What are the soft traits that, outside of when you are just quote unquote naked, or a black t-shirt and a black pair of jeans and a pair of Nikes, what makes you a high value man? Let's talk about some soft traits. So what would be the first one that you would define?
That's good. I like that. It sounds to me like a high value man is someone who you call when you need something done, someone you can rely on, someone who's out there making stuff happen. So I love this definition. I also love the idea of being around other high value men. Iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. I love the idea that we all are in this together and we can support each other to the top. Now, the soft traits, I think this is different for everybody, but ultimately the number one pillar that's important is integrity or alignment. Mm-hmm. So if the image I'm trying to put out to the world, let's say Bentley's, this nice apartment complex, whatever, is a certain way, no right or wrong on either of this. But if internally I'm not aligned, my internal world is not aligned with the external world that I'm living in, then I've disconnected from myself, and it's ultimately going to catch up with me. And that's where we see people who make all the money and they come down. They're living out of alignment with themselves ultimately. So I think the first top value, soft trait is integrity. And then it's an option for us to decide who we really want to become and what we need to do to get there. We talked before, DeAndre, on our last call about vision and the compass being the values. The vision is the map. It's a picture of where we want to go in our life, in our health, wealth, our relationships, everywhere. We get clear on the map we want to go, and then it's our values that I say is our compass. Our compass, which helps us decide how we get to where we go. When we come to a crossroads, it tells us which way to turn. And so if long as we are clearly defined where we want to go, and we decide what we need to do to get there, meaning we understand the quality of character we need to have to get there. Yeah, to get to the end of our life and make $100 million, sure. But how about being fulfilled and being connected to a partner or raising a family and having the depth of connection that we didn't have when we were kids? Getting really clear on those internal experiences we're hoping to have is what's most important, I believe. Because what's the point of making all this money if you're going to end up at the end of your life with no one around you and no one cares? They don't have U-Haul trucks at funerals, So ultimately, we have to get really clear on how we want to show up and how we want to navigate our life and move towards our vision. So integrity is number one, but then it's free game for you to decide as a man who you want to be.
Right. There was there's so much to unpack on there, guys. Make sure you drop a like right now. We got a bunch of people watching. Hit that like button. We got to show some love right here. Don't be a ninja watcher. So let's unpack that. Man, there was so much. One thing that stood out to me is this idea of purpose. So I didn't want to share my version, but one of the things I say up there, along with integrity, is you got to have a purpose as a man. That is the most important thing. Purpose over everything, because that purpose is what draws that masculinity or that jumping into freedom that allows a man to become a man. You're able to be more of a man for your wife, for your kids, for your business, for your church, when you are following that purpose and you're there focused on it. So you mentioned that vision is the map. I love this. A vision is the map, and values are the compass that allow you to make direction. So if a man here doesn't really have a purpose or a vision, okay, let's be more define this. Let's say he's kind of figuring out what is his purpose. He's moving in a direction. He might be making some money, but his purpose is kind of like wishy-washy. He's not completely lost, but he's not completely locked in. What are some things that this man can do to really lock in and move in a sense that when this guy walks, everybody knows just by his presence that he knows where he's going? How can we move to that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question, DeAndre. And when I think about the map analogy, the compass analogy, the purpose or the mission, the why is the fuel. It's the fuel that pulls your ass out of bed and gets you moving on your vision, because it's so much bigger than you. Once a man can get over himself, his ego gets out of his way, and he can start to step up and realize, as a high value man, there's people counting on him to stand up, to show up, to serve in some capacity. Ultimately, that becomes the mission. So defining how you want to serve the world, what kind of life you want to live, and I would say without question, it needs to not be just about you. It needs to be about other people, the world, whatever that might be. It doesn't matter. We all have our place in this world. There's no right or wrong with anything, but either way, get out of yourself, get into the world, add value. That leads to your vision. Your compass helps you navigate how you want to get there, and it's your ultimately that mission, that why, uncovering why you want to do this. Like, why do you want to change the world? Why do you want to build this business? Why do you want to make $100 million? Uncovering the why ultimately is what is most important in here. This is the purpose. Because if we are, well, there's two different ways to look at this. And I like to just think about it as simple as we're either going toward what we want or running away from what we don't want. And it's really great for me as a coach. I can pick up on it really quick in the language someone uses. So if I ask you, what do you want? Where do you want to go with your life? And you start listing off, well, I want to build this. I want to go here. I want to try this. That tells me you're toward motivated. You're going towards what you want. That's good. If you're telling me, well, I don't want this. I don't want to be poor again. I don't want to be hurt again by my girlfriend. I don't want to be broke again. You're living in a fear state, and you're trying to run away from what you don't want. And what you focus on, you create more of. Ultimately. So if you're focusing on what you don't want and you're running away from it, you're going to create more of that experience in your life. So you have to shift your focus toward what you do want and uncover why that is. Why do you want those things? And allow that to serve you and pull your ass out of bed and make sure you're moving towards your goals and your dreams and really bringing this vision. Because as a man, a high value man, you have a definite purpose. And alongside of this, I would say that you don't have to have all of the answers right now. Our purpose evolves and changes over time. What's clear to me is you get clear on what you want. And my belief is you surrender, you go with the flow, you take a step, the next step will always appear. And even if it doesn't end up exactly how you want it, you will have lived this incredible journey where you are fully present on purpose the entire time, taking one step at a time and really creating your life in a very intentional way, which to me is one of the most important things that we can do as men in this lifetime.
I love that. So let's move into this idea of values. And I think this was a question that I honestly want to know. We can even mastermind. So when I'm sitting, I want you guys to imagine this. So like I said, I'm 26 years old and I think I'm doing okay. Like I don't give myself that much credit, but at 25 years old, I built my first 7-figure business. And here I am, I'm sitting at a coffee shop across from this older gentleman. So he's about 10 years older about 8 years older than me. And this guy is living the life in Miami. So let me tell you about this guy. Like just really funny. One day he was telling me that he bought 3 to 4 apartments in a day in Miami because he didn't know which one. He liked the view in all of them, so he bought all of them. So that's the kind of wealth this guy's coming into. He has actually, I don't want to define it because he might even be watching this podcast. But this guy is sitting across from the table from me, and he's asking me life questions about what are values, how should I get into a romantic relationship. And I'm learning this myself, but I was like, whoa, these are deep questions that he doesn't know, but he has such this external success. And I started to talk to him, and I was like, man, like these are questions that men, myself, have to sit down and define. What are values? So my question to you, as almost in a mastermind here, Jesse, is what are pillars of value? Actually, I would like to know what you've defined as value, and if a man right now, under the age of 30, it has heard the word values but doesn't know where to even start. Where can he begin writing these down, discovering what they are, and then implementing them into his life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something every man should do. Everyone should know where they're going in life. Otherwise, they have no direction. They should know how they're going to get there. Again, this is the values, and they should know why they're going to where they're going. And at any point, you can change any of these things. It's never too late to change this in your life. But the first step is always getting clear on where you want to go and uncovering those values. And I think ultimately, you're going to sit down with yourself and you need to look yourself in the mirror and really decide what's most important to you. That's what a value is. What is most important to you about X, Y, and Z? And you can sit down as simple and ask a question. What were the times that I was most fulfilled? When were the times I was happiest? And it was like a real, authentic happiness. If that dude buying 4 apartments was happy, that's amazing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If he has the money and he's doing it, that's amazing. But only he knows if he's going home to one of those apartments and he's crying himself to sleep at night, or he's yelling at his girlfriend. Only he knows. So if he's unhappy, then he needs to uncover what it is that really makes him happy, and he needs to live his life in that way. So what makes you happy? What were the times you were most proud of yourself? When were the times you were most fulfilled? When were the times you were living a life that you just felt so connected and clear? Or if you don't have those experiences, what did you need as a kid? What didn't you receive as a kid? That if you were to bring a kid into this world, that you want to make sure that he has. I think those are a couple of great starting places for wherever someone's at in their journey. And the third step I would say is Tony Robbins talks about all the time. We just model. That's what we do in the NLP world. We model success. So if you see someone who is making all the money, look at his relationships. Is he all by himself, or is he looking super happy in his family life? Does he have kids running around? And that's what you want to start to take on and model that person's success so that you can embody their values as well. And then ultimately over time, once these sort of things, it's a little like, you ultimately need to sit down and do the work. And it feels like work at first. But then ultimately, once these kind of shift to you becoming consciously, or conscious and unconscious, these will shift into being unconscious. You'll be unconsciously competent, meaning you're living your life in just a natural way. And as soon as a choice comes to you, you have to decide this girl, or this deal or that deal, or yes or no. You understand just naturally, this is out of alignment. This is out of alignment with the way I choose to live my life. And I'm in charge of my life. I'm responsible for my results and my outcomes in my life. Therefore, I choose to say no. And ultimately, we have to uphold those boundaries and really practice living in those values. And hey, if we mess up, if we get off track, we make a mistake, then there's a huge opportunity to learn there, to shift our experience and how we handle decisions, whether in the relationships or business or otherwise, and keep moving forward on our life path.
So how big of a role did the military play in your days now as a civilian?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been out of the Marine Corps for like 11 years, and I'm a shell of the person I was before that. My perspective on the way the world works is completely different. However, the Marine Corps saved my life. I was a super troubled kid. I was in and out of school all the time for fighting, smoking weed, cussing out teachers. I got kicked out of my school and then my home my freshman year for violence in my home. I punched my own mom in the face and knocked her out. I was in a very dark place. I was in a very troubled home, and I was, if not getting kicked out of my own house, I was going to be arrested. And ultimately, it was like the best thing that could have happened to me to get kicked out of my house in such a violent way, because it got me out of the environment that I was in. That was a very toxic and dangerous place. So the military then served as that sort of structure that I needed to allow me to cultivate a discipline and direct my energy. which is all that I had. I was acting out because I had all this energy, this anger, this sadness, this feeling of being unloved by my family, that I needed to direct to something. So the military served as a great purpose, a transition for me to be from a boy to become a man. I went on 3 deployments. I served in combat in Afghanistan. I got to travel all around the world with my best friends. I really learned what it was like to be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I was able to come out on top as a leader, top of my class. I was meritorious, promoted a couple of times. So it was a real test for me. And there's also things I'm embarrassed about where I lacked integrity and I was called out on it and these sort of things. So it was a great proving ground for me to step from my troubled youth into becoming a man of service, serving something larger than myself and working for men around me, for the survival of the men around me, instead of just looking at myself. So it was a great experience overall, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. But I'm also I'm a different man than I was before when I left that military, for sure.
I love that. So you're saying some traits here that if you're open to sharing with us now, I think could help a lot of people if you also share with it following the things that you learned. Was your father, or did you have a strong father figure in your life growing up?
Yeah. So my dad left when I was 7 years old, and
Mm.
my mom was raising 4 kids, single mom raising 4 kids. She was an oncology nurse when my parents were together. My parents split up, and she opened up a child care. Not long after that, my older brother got pancreatic cancer. So she went from taking care of sick people in the hospital to taking care of my older brother. I started acting out and didn't get the attention I needed. My mom was, I would say, like emotionally bankrupt in some ways, and she was projecting all her sadness and frustration with my dad and my brother onto me, which is why I was so troubled. My dad was around. I know he loved us, but he wasn't there. He wasn't present. I saw him only a few times a year, and it ended up working out that when I got kicked out, he had moved back. I grew up in Iowa, so he had moved back to Iowa. By the time I got to high school, freshman years when I was kicked out of my home, and I did move over to him. So he was there in a way when I needed him later in my teen years, but ultimately as a kid, he wasn't there. And it was interesting actually, DeAndre, because I'm back here where I live now in Florida. I was traveling for like 2 years, backpacking, kind of doing what you're doing in a way, but came here in Florida because of COVID, and landed here not really sure, other than to see my dad lived here. I didn't have any other reason to be here, and it ended up working out that I would stay here. But I didn't realize how much resentment and anger I was carrying towards my father, because my brother ended up passing away. My mom has struggled our entire life. My younger brother and sister were in the same sort of boat, and I believe in a way I blamed him. I blamed him for leaving, not taking ownership. And anytime I brought it up, he would be very defensive. He didn't know how to take ownership. So it was very challenging for me to have a conversation with him. And I've been about a year and a half here, and it took a full over a year. I journal often. I write out my thoughts and how I'm experiencing the world. And I remember looking in my journal a year to the date. I think it was like last October. The year before that, so what, October 2020, I still was writing about how much anger and resentment I'm holding toward my father. And when I get around him, I couldn't have a conversation with him. I would just sit there stone face, and I just couldn't. My wife would have to talk to us, and she always talked about how awkward it was because I couldn't talk to him. And I was able to move past that. I'm happy to share a bit more about that, but I don't want to take over the conversation too much here. But I think his
I think
absence in
that's
my
the stuff
life.
we need to hear. I mean, for those of you watching, I've shared it before that my father wasn't in my life. He was very similar. He was the guy that I would see him once a year around my birthday. He would text me and say, "Hey, I'm going to come pick you up." I got raised by my grandparents. So once in a while, he'd pick me up or say he'd pick me up and then never show up. And here I was 6, 7 years old. You can imagine a kid with my suitcase waiting. He never showed up. So that was my experience with my father. Now, in today's day and age, we have a little bit of, I'd say a lot, a way better relationship, but it's not perfect. There's still, when he calls me, I'll decide if I want to answer 50-50, just because if I feel like it, when it shouldn't have to be that way. So I totally feel you. So okay, let's keep, I mean, if you don't mind going into that, how important is a father figure, right? Because now we're being high value men. Eventually, those of us watching this channel, high value men, remember, it's not just your money and the car that you drive, it's your household, the leadership you build for your wife and for your family. So how important is being a high value man for your children coming in? Whether it's your future children, that actually, let's talk about you more specific so we actually get emotion behind it. How are you going to understand, take this high value concept that you're developing now and move it towards your children, and be this father figure that you saw, that the mistakes that your dad made and kind of how you grew up, so that you don't replicate that.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say that if you're a high value man to the world and you're super popular or whatever, but you're neglecting your family, your kids, your wife, to me, you've lost the mark. You're living out of alignment. There's there's no value here, because ultimately our first and most important responsibility is our purpose. As a man, I believe it's our purpose. But if we're neglecting the internal life we have at our home life, and that's rocky, then we are sabotaging our health, our success, our financial situation. Even if not now, it'll be a slow decline, or eventually it'll decline and you'll be bankrupt inside and out. So I think that's the first thing. It's so important to get alignment with these things. If you're high value on the outside, you sure as hell better be high value on the inside. Now, as it comes to being of value, can you ask me the question again, DeAndre?
Yeah. So how important is a father figure and leadership for the children?
Well, I mean, it's everything. I mean, what else is if there's no father figure in the household, and there's a lot of single moms raising kids, and this is ultimately, I feel like, a destabilizing force in our society. We have no men, and the reason that is, I believe, is because men have been demasculinated.
Mm-hmm.
We are shamed, we are suppressed, we are told who we are, and what we are is not good enough. We're deemed to be failures. I was told as a young kid by everybody I knew, teachers, my family. I just felt like an absolute failure. I felt like I was absolutely worthless. So what did I do? I created experiences that would validate that emotion. So, and actually, one of the things that really saved my life was a mentor. A male figure stood in as a mentor role for me for about 9 months, and it got me out of trouble. I was going to the YMCA and lifting weights instead of getting in fist fights after school. It totally changed my life. And all a man needs to do is be present, because your kids are just going to show up and they're just going to be in awe of you. You're a superhero to them. So they just need you to be there, to have an emotional connection to them, to feel your heart, and just give some of your heart to them, and be present. Put your phone down, set aside time to be there, fully engaged, play with them, get on their level. I mean, that's all you have to do. It's almost too easy. You just have to sit your stuff down and be there. And I feel like as a man, some of the most important things we can do is be on purpose. Absolutely. But we have to be present where we are. If we're not, even if your kids are in your home and you're still there and you're married, but you're not emotionally engaged with them, then you have work to do ultimately. And if you don't do that, your kids are going to go elsewhere to find it. And they're going to get into trouble. They're going to get into drugs. They're going to get into some other sort of fist fights and everything else. Or they're going to go find other, gangbangers or whatever in their neighborhood that are going to suck them up and bring them in and show them their way of living. So
I love that. Go ahead, sir.
No, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I love that. We all, as children, are looking for that sense of direction, which comes from the masculine frame, and we're going to get it from somewhere. They'll be digital in today's days. It's going to be digitally. You might have your Captain America, your Superman, but then there also has to be in your real life. You're going to seek that from somewhere. And we talked about it on the last episode. But for me, that growing up, I had my grandfather, but there was always that separation gap that, because, and like I said, there's no love missing or anything, but it was my grandfather. But there was something different when it's with your father. And so when I started to get into the older ages of becoming more of a man in high school, in the locker room, what is it to be a man? You sleep with a lot of girls. I get into fraternity. The guys are talking about, oh, I've slept with 50 girls. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, at the time I only had like maybe 3 girlfriends in my life. And he's talking about sleeping with 50 girls. And I'm like feeling demasculated, because I'm like, I have to sleep with more girls so I could become more attractive, because I always saw him with other girls. And so that started to play into the latter half of my life, where I was like, why am I sleeping with all these girls? It's this empty hole. And we talked about that on the further episode, is that if a young man doesn't have this sense of direction, he's going to seek for it at another place. Typically, if you're a father in a place that you don't want him to do, it's going to be the locker room, the fraternity, the music, or something. So us high value men, and we're gonna get, as we're breaking this word down, I don't think it's not even superficial. That high value man, it's also taking this inner world as well into account. So as the transition now, because we're talking about kids, and Jesse doesn't have any kids at the time of recording right now, as far as we know, right? I don't think I think he's no kids or anything, but a high value man. Let me actually have a really good question. I wrote this out. Let me get it here. Is okay. What qualities were you looking for when you were searching for a woman? Because you're married, which is a win when it comes to this whole idea of family. You're winning. You got a ring on it. You found a woman. She chose you. You chose her. You committed to her for life. There were qualities you were looking for. What were those?
It's a great question. I think the first thing for me when I think back on how my wife and I came together was, we weren't expecting this. We weren't expecting to be in this sort of thing. In a way, it was superficial at first. There has to be some sort of physical attraction on both sides, I believe, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You want to be attracted to who you're going to spend the rest of your life with, so that's huge. But ultimately, once you get into the relationship, my experience of it, and we've been through a lot of stuff. She's been through some of my darkest days right alongside me, been supporting me since really we met. She's just been there unconditionally. I've experienced unconditional love from my wife. And, she loved me when I hated myself, and I think that's a huge thing. I never had experienced that before. That feeling of unconditional love, and there's this feeling like she always wants the absolute best for me, and I want the absolute best for her. And we have different ways of expressing that. And sometimes I communicate it in a way that maybe she doesn't appreciate, and sometimes she's, doing the same thing. But ultimately, there's this unconditional feeling of knowing that I just want what's absolute best for you, not what's best for me. And there's negotiation, and there's conversations and clear communication that needs to be had in any healthy relationship, of course. But ultimately, it's just wanting the absolute best for this person, loving her unconditionally, which is something I've had to work through a lot. There's these little things that I would pick out, and I'm just repeating patterns from my past, but and how I saw relationships growing up. But I think that's the most important thing. This willingness to surrender the need to control this person and just celebrate them for who she is, inside and out. That's the type of person you should be attracted to, not someone who you're going to come into and want to change them and move them around and help them be your trophy, but someone who can just sit there and that you're going to bounce off when she, gains 10 pounds or whatever it is. You love them unconditionally for who they are. That's the type of experience I believe is most important in a relationship.
Perfect. So what I heard there was, number one is you're going to be attracted to him, which I totally agree with. You want to be physically attracted to him. You don't want to be looking left and right. The second thing I heard was supportive, a person that is supportive. Third was unconditional love. That was what I was hearing. Is that a summation of kind of what right there? So I have a personal question as well, because are you familiar with red pill? This idea of red pill guys and simping. Have you ever heard of this stuff?
I think of red pill. I think of like popping out of the Matrix. Is that the same thing or something different?
Okay, so like there's this class of it's similar. That's where it's derived from. It's this sense of blue pill is the idea of simping, a guy that's always like, a doormat for a woman, always doing extra and extra, and women are just running over him. That's a blue pill. And then there's this category of men called red pill, which is like the opposite, which is like we are the top. We're gonna have a rotation of girls, and we're gonna dominate them and pick up artists and that kind of stuff. So that's a red pill. But then there's the purple, is right in the middle. So a question that I have is, I was in the blue pill, and then I went red pill because I got my heart broke, and then I realized that there's no virtue in that either. And so one of the things that I have, and I have bad habits now, that when I meet a girl, it's like I have these red pill mentalities that I'm taking her to the bed within the first date or two. If not by date 3, you're getting out. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that I'm going to attract the quality woman thinking like that. So when you attracted your current wife, how do you balance between being a loving, ravishing of love for your wife, and also being able to be masculine and not be too openly feminine or emotional? Like how do you define that now that you're in a romantic relationship?
You got to know what you want. You got to be clear on your boundaries. You have to be clear on how you're going to navigate this world, and be a pillar. You have to be a pillar, not be paved over. The feminine is wild. It's unpredictable. It's emotional. It's energetic, especially Latin American women. I love Latin American women. They're absolutely amazing inside and out. But ultimately, a lot of women who are very feminine, which is often what's attracted towards really masculine men. They're wild and unpredictable. They're emotional, and that's a gift. That's their gift. A man has to be solid in his presence, true to himself, in his power, and know who he is, values, vision, purpose, in order to not be swayed by the unpredictability of a woman's presence and her energy. And absolutely every single time a woman is going to test a man, test a man and see if he can stay grounded in that. So I think a man needs to know who the hell he is, what he wants in his life, and make sure that the women coming in are in alignment with that and support him of that. However that looks, there needs to be an alignment with that. But ultimately, a man has to know what he wants. I believe that purpose should be most important. And then you find a feminine, a woman companion that will complement that sense of purpose and presence. I mean, a king has to have a kingdom. He has to take care of his kingdom, but he also has to have a queen. So I think they complement each other, and it's a dance between the two. But ultimately, you have to know who you are and where you stand in this world, and allow the woman to complement you through a mutual respect and integrity and love.
So that, guys, was almost verbatim out of The Way of the Superior Man. I don't know if you read that book, but what you said in the first half was literally taking chapters out of the book. That is so key. So do you guys notice this cycle here? I love how the podcast is like, as we're starting to wrap up here, it's like coming to a beautiful end, that we started the podcast talking about defining yourself as a man, and now we are talking about relationships, but we almost went back to the same cycle, that if you want to be in a beautiful romantic relationship, you have to know who you are first. So I don't know if you would agree with me, Jesse, that if a man is watching this podcast right now, he's having difficulty dating women, and he's fumbling girls, and he's trying to figure things out, maybe the answer is to step away from women and to go into the room by yourself and figure out who you are, and do the opposite. You want more girls, or you want that one girl that you're connecting with, get away from girls, which is like opposite, and go by yourself, and then you will attract the right one. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Especially if you're in transition, a man needs to go in. I mean, in Colombia, they have vision quests or a fast, or doing something challenging, going out doing something hard on your own or with other men or something like that, to sit with yourself and experience, to grieve that cycle. The cycles you've been on, DeAndre, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. The problem comes when you're stuck in the cycle and you don't want to be anymore. And it's time to move on. And you want something else. You want to have a wife or a meaningful relationship, but you can't get out of the bars and chasing after women. We go through cycles and phases in our life, and we ultimately have to decide how we want to show up in this way. But just as we can get clear on where we want to go with our business, let's say, we get clear on the vision, we can get very clear on the type of woman we want to have in our life. Getting really clear on the physical aspects that she has that are very attractive to you. There's nothing wrong. I believe you should definitely claim that. Claim that as yours, create it in your mind. But what's key to, let's say, attraction is the feeling. What are the feelings you believe are going to come from that experience of a woman or a business or whatever? Get clear on those feelings, and then just figure out how to create them for yourself now. And once you become you take control of your state, and you become the cause or the creator of your reality in your life, you become a magnet for that type of woman, for this type of abundance, for this type of experience in your physical reality. I believe that's what men need to do, is to take ownership of our life, and whether it's business or girls or whatever else, get clear on what we want, and we start to show up in that way with our state and our physical emotions, and start to create a reality from the inside out.
Okay, so Kelson asked a question in the comment section. So Kelson is newly engaged, and he asked, could it be possible for a woman to attack a man's masculinity in a relationship? Perhaps not on purpose, but subconsciously.
Of course, I think it's possible. I think I think all of a woman's emotions, for the most part, are going to be unconscious. And so I think it's going to be important for you to really stand empowered in your presence, not be reactive, meaning you don't get emotional when she gets emotional. You stay calm, you stay present, you stay in control of your state because you're responsible for your life and your results and how you show up in the world. So you listen to your wife, you hear her out, you try to listen to the words. Okay, you catch the word, but then you try to uncover the feeling beneath the words. That is what she needs validated. She needs to hear that you know how she's feeling, not what she's thinking or what she's saying, but how she's feeling. Now, if it's something else and she's attacking you over and over again and she's belittling you, that's a whole different story. That sounds like a toxic relationship. So ultimately, if she's just being, kind of emotional or erratic, stay grounded in your power, in your presence. And if it's negative all the time, or she is berating you and attacking you, well, you're gonna have to reconsider how you're showing up in relationship and why you're attracting this type of relationship and what's the cause, and then ultimately take responsibility on how you're going to move forward from that position.
I love that. So if that answers your question, Kelsey, you can go ahead and drop another comment. By the way, if you have any questions right now, if you're watching live, go ahead and drop those. And if we have some time towards the end, we'll be wrapping up maybe one or two more questions here. We might have some time to answer that question. So if a man under the age of 30 is finding difficulties connecting with a woman and wants a deep, loving relationship, what are 3 steps that he can take to start? Like, let's just say he's not having problem attracting women, but now it's connecting and having deep relationships. Kelson says, thanks, by the way. Deep relationship. What are 3 things that he could do today to start fostering that?
Yeah, I think one thing would be to look at his relationship with his mother and the women in his life that had a major influence on his life and make sure that is healed. I would say the same thing with the father. This is so important to, if not completely rebuild that bridge, but at least forgiven our mom and our father for doing what they, not providing what we needed when we were kids because they didn't know how to do it. That's the first thing. And that's going to allow us to grieve. Men need to grieve the loss, the things they didn't receive as kids, the abuse they experienced. They need to get into the depths of their emotions and understand that we have a left brain and a right brain for a reason. We have a logical thinking side and emotional and creative side for a reason. We have to use both of these if we want to truly actualize our full potential. So I think getting into the depths of understanding who we are at an emotional level, uncovering our needs, our emotional experiences, becoming self-aware, emotionally intelligent will be number 2. And number 3 is just go out and get what you want. Go out and be that magnet. Get into the depths of who you are and go out and attract the life that you desire by taking action. I believe the law of attraction stands for I attract what I act on. Attraction. So go out and get clear on what you want and then move forward and be willing to fail. Be willing to get into bad relations, and just out of nowhere, when you're least looking for it, this incredible woman is going to pop into your life and it's going to change the game for you. And you're going to know what I'm talking about.
That got me excited. Drop a like right now if that got you excited. You actually said something as we wrap up. Final question, because I'm gonna open up, guys. I don't have the best relationship with my mom. My mom wasn't there, and even at the time of recording, she's in rehab. She's going through this cycle of very bad stuff that she's putting my grandparents through right now as we speak. And so I had a rocky relationship with my mother. And then I healed it at the age of 19. And then she started regressing and having more alcohol. And now, like, what she's done in the last, 5 years has trumped what she did me growing up. And I feel like I have to go back again and re-heal that. So this is something that I just learned back in what could be a reason that I'm having trouble connecting with girls. I don't have a problem attracting girls. I can attract any girl. I can go out right now and just attract a beautiful woman, which I've done many times. But now it's getting to a deeper level of connection that I haven't been able to figure out. And I'm not the only one here. So you mentioned mother. Could you talk about that one more time? This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
that relationship with your mom.
Yeah, well, that first relationship are this primal archetypal relationships. We have to have some sort of understanding about how to navigate that relationship. I mean, it depends on everyone. Everyone's situation is different. Some people are fortunate enough to grow up with both parents in their home and they have the love and the attention they need. But if they don't, ultimately, at some point, there's a crossover where we have to start to take responsibility and stop blaming our parents, mom or dad, or whoever else for our experience of this world. Otherwise, we become victims. If we're living as a victim, we're just going to be creating that experience over and over again. So it's really unfortunate, DeAndre, that this is happening for your mom. There's an opportunity here to really forgive this woman who's experiencing this trauma, any sort of addiction of any kind, even if it is business or alcohol or drugs. That is a treatment. It's a mask
Mm-hmm.
to cover up the deeply rooted trauma and pain that, in this case, your mom is experiencing. She
Right. And I
doesn't
know
have.
exactly what the trauma is. I've tried to talk so I've tried to do the work, the subconscious work. I flew her out to my house to do all this stuff, and I still feel that, that trauma. So how does that affect my romantic relationship now? If I'm still having this kind of battle with my mom on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, I think you also have to figure out where you set the boundaries, because just as it is important for you to give your mom a chance, to forgive her, it's also important for you to live your life, to live on purpose. And to, I think the most important thing, no matter what our relationship is with our parents, no matter how much they were there, even if, they left when you were kids, deep down, they want what's absolute best for you. They want what is absolutely best for you. And to see you at your best, to see you thriving in business and in relationships is what deep down, whether they know it or not, whether their trauma response to drugs, alcohol is showing that or not, deep down, they want you, DeAndre, to live your absolute best life in relationship, to have what they never had. What parent doesn't want their kid to have what they never had? And if your mom is experiencing these things, she's never had the opportunity to love the depth of relationship that you have an opportunity to build for yourself by deciding to go create it for yourself.
I love that. I love that. I think that's not only help me and give me some things to think about, but also those of us that are watching that don't have the best relationship with our mothers and fathers. So the final question here to wrap up is the term high value man superficial? I'll start first. I think that, and what I'm doing with this podcast, we're being consistent here. Like I said, well, my vision, and I told you guys from the jump when we started this, I saw 10,000 people watching this live. I have it literally written on my goal card that we'll have 10,000 people watching live. So this is literally the second interview. So I'm trying different things, from quality interviews, interview styles, questions prepared, all this different stuff to make a better experience for the people that are watching live and the recording on the YouTube channel. And so I believe that the word high value man, as termed right now, is a egotistical word. It is slightly superficial, not all the way, but I would say 50% superficial. Because when I say the word, I feel, as I studied it, it was superficial. But what I want to coin, and what we did this dissected on this podcast here, is that the real high value man is not superficial. It's not only in the outside world that he's showing these signs of success, but it's also the inside, what he's doing with his home, with his wife, with his kids, with himself, with his God, with his body, with his food, with all of those. And that is what we define as a high value man. And the goal with this channel, and it's getting stronger and stronger each episode, is that a high value man is in all areas. It's not a superficial word. And that when we say this word, we're recoining it as a guy that you don't need the Lambo. You can be a guy without an apartment, but you're such a strong presence and character and leadership that people look up to you. So I would leave this word that we're recoining this, that a high value man is not superficial, but we have to take into account the soft traits. So passing that off to you, Jesse, would you think that the word high value man is superficial?
And I think you said it really well, DeAndre. I think it's a inside out sort of thing. It's inside your home and out in the world, creating value for the people in your life, in your community, but also really taking care of your kids and showing up as a present for your wife when she needs you to show up. So I think you are spot on. It's the hard traits, those masculine building traits in the world, but also the soft traits and the depth of your character and the quality of your relationships.
Perfect. So, guys, as we wrap up, how can people get a hold of you, Jesse? There's going to be people watching the recording, mostly because we did have a switch in time. They might want to reach out to you, whether they're watching this episode tonight or a year from now. Where can people reach out to you and learn more about you, your story, maybe some of your coaching and your retreats that you have in Colombia, maybe even your music festival that you might be having soon?
Yeah, absolutely. DeAndre, thanks so much for having me on again. Thanks everyone for listening. The best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram, action_Jesse. Shoot me a message. Let me know what you think a high value man is or what stood out about the show. My website, action-oriented.com. You can learn more about coaching. You can learn more about the retreats I have coming up in Colombia, and I'll be building up the festival, so that'll come out on Instagram here soon. And yeah, I'm calling forward men who want to step into the arena to own their leadership. I've got a conscious leadership accelerator launching the first week in May. So if you hear this in time, reach out. This is for men who want to stand as pillars of safety and security in their family and community. Want to be high value men inside and out. If that sounds like you want to be around other men to sharpen that iron, then hit me up on Instagram.
Perfect. And I will drop show notes and links to his social media in the notes below on YouTube. And that will be it. Thank you so much for your time, Jesse. Let's rock and roll. We served a lot of men today, and we're becoming better versions of ourselves each and every single day. And looking forward to having more conversations with you. Awesome.
Absolutely, brother.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Jesse.
See ya.